So I have to tell you that my daughter credits you with completely changing her dating life.
I had a very tumultuous upbringing. And so it wasn't a shock that I would go for a narcissistic person who would belittle me, who was incredibly grandiose. Like everyone that meets him now is like, oh, you didn't see that? It's like, no, I didn't. If I grew up in a household where no one modeled what a healthy and secure relationship looks like, then that means I need to learn that now.
You're connecting the dots about hormones and brain chemicals and all these things that we often can misattribute in our body, whether that's trauma bond, the jungle drums that you hear when you're around an unavailable guy who reminds you of, one of your parents.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get so wise? Like, what the hell? Do you feel like there was a rock bottom moment? Sabrina, it's so good to be in conversation with you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I have to tell you that my younger daughter, turned me on to your podcast. And she credits you with completely changing her dating life. Like you have had huge influence on her. I mean, she's been to therapists, she's done other things, but your influence has been mighty. And she, of course, had a number of questions for you. I want to honor her. She wanted to know about being a woman in her 20s and communicating her standards. Like, what does the drip look like as she is dating someone new? How do you communicate your standards? And I'm also curious, part two of the question, does it change as you get older?
I would hope that it would change as I get older because I know that my needs at 22 are completely different now in my 30s. What I'm looking for in a partner, the type of way I need a partner to show up for me, the way I need to be loved have all evolved as I've learned how to love myself differently. And I think when it comes to standards, it's kind of how I feel about boundaries. I think it's important to talk about them when they arise, right? So here are things, so I'll give an example. When I met my partner and we went on our first date, we slept together on the first date. And I know that's so faux pas to so many people. And when I left, I looked him right in the eyes and I said, listen, I had such a great time with you. And if this was it, great. Thank you so much. It was great to have met you. And I said, but if you're going to call me again, that's because we're going to build something and you're intentional to date. I'm not your booty call. I'm not your casual girl. I'm not going to be that woman that you call up at 9:00 at night to ask me to come over. So if you call me again, that's because we're going to see if we have something here. And if not, there's truly no hard feelings.
And he thought that was hot.
Oh my God. He was like, God, that was so sexy. And I get it. The old version of me was like, oh my God, don't you dare say that. You're going to be too much. Who are you to take up this kind of space? But then I realized if I don't fight for my standards and what I need and my desires, who's going to? There's no one that's going to have my back like I will, except my mother, and she's unfortunately not always there. And even that. But I think when it comes to the times, I think a lot of people, especially when I was younger, I thought I had to scream really loud to be heard. So it was like, I need to tell you all of my boundaries off the bat, and I need to tell you the kind of man or woman or they that you need to be for me to date you. And what I realized as I've gotten older is it's less talking and more really data collection and, of course, communicating when the moments rise. But I don't think that we need to come out the gate and being like, by the way, this is all the laundry list of what I need you to be. I think if I want to attract or bring in a partner that's going to align in the way that I want to be loved, then I need to show up as that, and I need to demand that for myself, which means communicating as they go and setting boundaries and having these conversations when the moments arise, instead of first date, all of a sudden we're sitting there with a spitfire of all these things and boundaries and things that I require and request before I've even known if this person's somebody I even want to see again.
That's good. So it needs to be contextualized. You need to kind of roll it out as appropriate for the circumstance.
I think so. I think especially when it comes to dating, let's be honest, who taught us? We are learning based on the people in our surroundings. We're learning based on pop culture and TV and our caregivers and our environments. So for me personally, if I grew up in a household where no one modeled what a healthy and secure relationship looks like, then that means I need to learn that now. And with that's going to come learning about myself. And so it's important for me to get curious about what's coming up for me, what's happening in the moments, how's my body feeling, what are the narratives and the stories that I'm creating about the circumstances, because then I can start to look at and say, what did I used to accept in relationships that I'm no longer willing to? And how is it that I need to be treated moving forward? Because if I'm worried about losing them, then I'm probably already lost myself. And to me, that's way too high of a price.
Oh, so good. Okay, so I want to slow this down for a minute. So you're just talking about using your body as an instrument to assess this whole dating process. Can you dive deep on that? Because I want to understand, okay, what are you noticing? What are the signals that we're supposed to be paying attention to?
100%. So usually what we see is when people go on dates, it's very, here's how I felt about them. And it's like, I don't really care what you felt about them. You don't know this person. I can project all day onto everyone that I meet for 25 minutes. I want to know, how did I feel with them? And so an example is I had a client this morning and we were talking about this new person that she's dating. And she said, when I'm with him, it's incredible. It's amazing. I've never felt better. Okay, what happens when you're not? And she says, that's it. I'm hell in a handbasket. So when I started to discover, I said, okay, so right before you sent him that novella paragraph of all of these things that you're not receiving from him, what did you feel? And she didn't really understand the question. I said, did your chest tighten? Did your shoulders start to come up? Did you start to sweat? What was the precursor? Because what that's telling me is typically dysregulation. Are you dating with a regulated nervous system, meaning that I'm coming with choices, that I understand that I'm an adult in my present body, living in the present world. I'm not 6 years old trying to talk to my mom or dad to see me. And then while somebody is talking to me, am I able to stop and say, oh, I really don't like how this makes me feel. Oh, my chest is tightening up. This makes me feel really small like I did as a kid. Okay, this feels really familiar. I don't know if I want to see this person again. More often than not, we just go into, am I feeling the butterflies? Am I feeling the spark? And I think we've seen enough data to show that you can have a really beautiful relationship when it doesn't start at 100 with fireworks and a massive feeling in your body. And so I'm a big fan of, if I listen to my body and I really understand what's coming up, then I can be more connected to the thoughts and start to bridge the gap between here and not just be living in one of the two.
A lot of people have a hard time with that, Sabrina, right? Like we're sort of trained in the system where we live, patriarchal system, to ignore and dissociate from a lot of this noticing. Like if we notice too much, it's overwhelming. So what do you say to someone who has a hard time noticing how they feel?
I think the place to really start is even just to look, because I think a lot of people struggle with how do I understand my feelings? What do I know what they are? I don't even need anybody to understand what they are. What I want them to do is just be aware of the actual body sensations. So for instance, yesterday I was being really hard on myself. I just was getting in my own head and I was doing what I've always done to myself, which is attack myself more than anybody else could. And I stopped and I said, I'm really proud of you. And I stopped and I said, where do I feel that? And I felt this tightness in my body. And I just sat for a second. And as we know, Jill Bolt Taylor, her studies have been that it takes 90 seconds for the emotion to run its course. And the more we fight it, right? How many times you hear people say, I don't feel better? It's like, but are you feeling? Are you allowing yourself to literally sit and just not even have a thought of where do I feel this? Can I trace the sensations? What helped me personally, because I was as far from that as you could possibly imagine when I was in New York in my 20s and I was sleeping with every person that walked and trying to connect in every other way besides in the real connecting way. And what helped me was like meditating and yoga, not when I was dysregulated, when I was more regulated so I could connect my mind to my body, do a body scan, even just stopping of like, is there tension in my neck? Can I try to just be with it? That way we can at the very least just start with the tip of the iceberg of like, can I wiggle my toes and see how that feels on the ground? Can I move my neck and stop, just pause for a second and see how that feels in my body? It at least just brings you into the space as opposed to trying to get out of it by staying in our head. Because when we intellectualize, we're just disconnecting from the rest of us. And I want to be able to bridge the gap.
I love this because you're connecting the dots in a way that I haven't considered before about hormones and brain chemicals and like all these things that we often can misattribute in our body. You know, like whether that's trauma bond and sort of the jungle drums that you hear when you're around an unavailable guy who reminds you of, one of your parents.
Oh, yeah.
So this is super juicy. Thank you. How did you get so wise? Like, what the hell? Like something, do you feel like there was a rock bottom moment where you were just like, okay, I've got to completely change my matrix?
100%. And it's as clear as day for me as you say it. And if I cry, that's part of this because it was such a monumental part. I married my father. Like, it was the exact replica of him, but not as overt. Like, my father is as classic narcissist as you could possibly imagine. I still have love for him because I know it's not out of malice, but he's not the best human in the world. And he was very abusive verbally and physically as for kids. And I had a very tumultuous upbringing. And so it wasn't a shock that I would go for a narcissistic person who would belittle me, who was incredibly grandiose. Like everyone that meets him now is like, oh, you didn't see that? It's like, no, I didn't. And I remember we dated, we broke up. It was one of those where got a new girlfriend 2 weeks later. And I remember telling my mom, like, it's got to be me. I'm sorry. There's got to be something wrong. I'm 27. I can't keep a boyfriend. These guys are all leaving me. There must be something wrong with me. And he came back and we started dating. And I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. Oh my God, he just validated I'm enough. It was one of the worst relationships I've ever had. And a year and a half later, he said, I'm leaving you. I'm going to Spain with my family and you're no longer invited. And when he left, my mom came to visit me and she knew. I was like, I'm not going to be okay. I was done. Like, he was moving out. I was suicidal. I was not able to eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function. I dropped from where I'm at now about 25 pounds. So I was looking incredibly scary. And my mom said, she looked at him when he walked out the door and he said, your daughter needs therapy. And she looked him in the eyes and said, you're going to regret the day you say that because she's finally going to see who you are. And I started therapy. And my therapist at the time said, I think you need to find a support group. I think you need to find someone to talk to. And I found this Narcissist Anonymous group on 27th and 6th Ave in New York. And I strolled on in. And I remember it's like probably 30 people in the room. And I was sitting here and everybody's looking and they're like, Sabrina, could you go next? And I was like, could somebody else go first? And yeah, okay, somebody next to you. And it's this woman talking about how she has this beautiful, healthy relationship. And she's so secure in all of these things. And everyone, she's kind of the matriarch of the group. And she's been there for years. And so they said, okay, Sabrina, do you feel comfortable? And I said, okay. And I shared everything. And I remember after going, but you know what? This is totally my fault. Like, I'm the wrong person here. I almost said his name. Didn't do anything. This is all me. And she just turned around to me and said, oh, honey, no, that's not okay. And when she said it, I think everything, I could feel it in my body. It just dropped. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, that's called abuse. And what you just experienced is a narcissist. And I said, but why are you here? And she said, because I was you. And she said, I used to come to these meetings and cry because I genuinely believed there was something wrong with me. And now I get to be on the other side to show you what doing the work and going through it will get you.
Wow.
And it changed my life. I remember coming home and being like, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm dating Dad. And I just dove into therapy and I dove in. And it took me years. That was 2019. We're in 2025. It's been 6 years of terrible relationships and failing and eating shit and losing everything before I realized I had to find myself if I was trying to find anything else in my life. And that's how I got here.
Wow, Sabrina. So I've heard the wisdom of sobriety in your podcast. And so it's helpful for me to hear about this particular piece. I was in 12-step for food addiction, so I got that piece of recovery. And it was for me, the physical abstinence, maybe that has a resonance with dating. We'll talk about that. But the physical abstinence was easier than the emotional sobriety. And it sounds like you had this transmission, this download with that woman in New York.
Changed my life. I think just having somebody, especially someone that you're like, wait, you were like me? You were here and now you're there. Wait, there is a path. And I think when I started this career, I wasn't trying to do this. I was going to be on Shark Tank for my clothing company. Like, I thought that was my life and I was moving on. And then when that all fell to shit and I totally lost it, I realized that there has to be somebody else struggling in the ways that I was. And I didn't want to be alone anymore. And that's really why I started everything. It wasn't because I'm high and mighty. I'm just on a different part of my journey. I'm no better or worse. I've just seen some stuff and I'm trying to give a big alert of like, hey, this is the way if you actually want to maybe have a little bit more freedom. Because now, do I have anxiety? Yeah, I'm a human. That doesn't go away. Do I have trauma? Do I get triggered? Do I have all of those things? 1,000%. But I also have tools. I have me. I've got an incredible partner now and I've earned this security because I've worked my fucking ass off to get it. And I think that that's something that everybody can hold on to.
Yeah, well done. Beautiful. So I've got a number of questions from my daughter, and I want to ask them, but I also have sort of a meta question about them because she wanted to understand more about kind of the initial dating process and exclusivity and cheating and how to navigate that when you're early on. So I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about it in the sense that I sometimes wonder with dating if we're playing the wrong game. Like, is it that we're sort of in a race to make our lives with men like to be able to regulate our nervous systems around men who are not behaving that well. So it's, yeah, I've a couple of questions there. So maybe we'll start with exclusivity and
build our way.
Dating and build our way.
I think when it comes to, okay, so at the end of the day, there is no rule. I'm just going based on what have I seen professionally with people that I work with and then personally. When it comes to exclusivity, I think even just dating in the landscape overall, I used to be the girl that was like, let's start at 100. Why not, right? Can we love bombing? Come on, let's spend every day together. Let's get cute little nicknames. Let me tell you everything. Let me trauma dump with you on my second date and tell you how my father used to do this when I was a kid. I forced the intimacy because I was so terrified of being alone that if I could get you to stay and if I could show how much I am and you don't leave, oh, cool, there's nothing wrong with me. My dad was wrong. And then when you leave, just reaffirmed there is something wrong with me. And so when I had to kind of look at the lay of the land a little bit differently, I had to zoom out and start to look at different components that we're looking at in dating. So when you meet somebody, a first date is just to see if you even want to have a second date. A second date's just to see if you want to have a third. And we go into it, like today I was live and someone said, how do you know they're the one early in dating? And I was like, well, we need to reframe. When we're so beholden to this has to be the one, every rock I turned, it has to be there. What we're doing is we're trying to control the outcome. We're not actually being present in the moment to see if this is somebody. And we're so focused on being chosen that we're not also choosing. And so with the exclusivity conversation, my whole thing is, well, don't you need time to see if this is somebody that you'd want to cut everyone else out? You have 9 billion people on the planet to choose from. And if I'm going to take this one human, I want to make pretty damn sure that this person is somebody that I could actually build something with. Maybe it doesn't work out forever. Maybe it just works out for now. But let me have the data that I need to collect in order to know that. So that means I'm going to have to spend time with them. That means I'm going to have to, it doesn't have to mean you have to be physical if that's not your thing. For me, it was. For me, that also means that I need to see them in different environments. So I want to see how when they're triggered. How do they react when you go out to dinner and somebody doesn't do what they want? How do they react when somebody cuts them off? How do they react when you say no to them? That's when we start to see the bigger picture. And so for me to decide exclusivity, I need to have a little bit more because I know that there's different schools of thought. Some people will say boyfriend and girlfriend is exclusivity. And for me, I'm a big fan of if I'm meeting you in the wild or on an app, I want to get to know you first and still date other people because I want to keep my options open to make sure that I'm making a choice for myself. Then once we get to the, hey, I really like you. I think you're amazing. Like I remember my partner, we were taking a shower one night, maybe 10 or 11 dates later. And he just turned to me and said, I just want to share something. I'm not expecting you to do the same, but I deleted my app today because I'm really into you and I don't have any need to see anybody else. I'm not forcing you to do the same. I just wanted to let you know this is where I'm at.
So healthy.
Oh, I just looked at him and I was like, okay, I'll do this. And I was honest with him at the time. I said, okay, I think I'll be ready to do that, but I'd like to have a bigger conversation next week about it. And he was like, okay, cool. Because he knew I was seeing somebody else. And so I had to tie up those loose ends before I said, yes, I'm going to be only with you. Because that's not fair to him to say yes and then still have that. And so then when we did that, we still dated another month until he said, would you be my girlfriend? And I said, I'm not ready. And he said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, you're a little bit more introverted. You know, he's a bit more on the avoidant leaning. I'm like, you're not exactly the most expressive and I could talk for days. I need to more vulnerability before I make that decision. He was like, you got it. And maybe a month later, he was like, how do you feel now? And I said, you've shown me so much more. Like, I'd love to be your girlfriend. We came in stages because everything we went, like we're still not engaged because I want to make sure that before we involve the government, I feel really confident and secure that this person and I can attune to each other's needs, that we have a dance going, that we're understanding each other, because I do want forever, but I want to make sure that that forever makes sense even now. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. I've really released control to the outcome of what's going to happen. And so when we talk about the exclusivity, then going into the relationship, if you want to go straight into boyfriend, girlfriend, go ahead. I don't really care. But I want you to take enough time to understand, am I choosing them? And then give me, and do this with anybody I work with. They're so amazing. List me 3 things. Give me 3 quantifiable reasons that make them amazing, that make them so special, that make them so lovely, that make them so kind. And I want tangible aspects. Because today when I did that, the girl looked and she just looked down and smiled and goes, I'll find them, don't worry. And I said, it's okay, I'll wait. And she couldn't. By the time the conversation was ending, she was in tears going, shit, I think he just reminds me of my dad.
So clarifying. So clarifying. So as you're talking about this slow data collection, and kind of working against this rush that maybe our culture puts on women to like find the one and, you know, find the guy that you're not settling for.
Don't forget to be a good girl while you're doing it.
And be a good girl while you're doing it. There's a way that we are screwing up our hormones in this huge rush to become exclusive and to find the one and like take those baby steps toward the government-sanctioned union. So, I mean, this is a counter narrative to like slow the whole process down. And I also see how hard it is for women to have a counter narrative.
Oh, 100%. And
so how do you help women see this?
I think what at the end of the day too is I see a lot of confusion with men as well. I think just people in general, I can't tell you how many emails I'll get of like, hey, I was on TikTok and this one girl said that men should never make the first move and it should be the woman. And I was like, but then I'm hearing the women go, but I don't understand. Why is he not doing anything? I think a lot of us are unsure how to navigate the lay of the land. And I know that what I'm going to say might be a little bit, oh, really, Zohar? But it's like, for me, I'm not trying to be anybody. That's why I hate, I don't know if you've seen on TikTok or Insta, the black cat golden retriever stuff. Have you been a part of that conversation?
I don't think so.
No, consider yourself lucky. It's this one creator came out of nowhere and said, don't be a golden retriever. Don't you dare try to be the one that's always excited and available. Be a black cat. Be mysterious. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Why are you trying to be something you're not? If you feel, like for a lot of people, if you feel like you want to go slower and you're meeting people that don't respect that, that's a boundary that you withhold for yourself because you are making choices as an adult. They're not crossing that. They're allowed to do whatever they want. I'm the one that allows it. And so I think what we really have to do is if we want that outer change and we want to change the way that we show up, then we have to change the way that we show up for ourselves. And that means validating, no, I do want to go slower. This doesn't make me feel comfortable. That means acknowledging, I don't like the texting behavior. I'm going to set that boundary and see how they respond to it. That means taking up space within our own lives to say, well, my emotions and feelings matter, but how am I going to be able to show up differently in my experience if I don't show up differently with myself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. And I take your point about it being a confusing time for men. I feel like, what I witness is that there's this profound evolution for women. Empowerment, sort of questioning a toxic culture. And I think there's a lot less modeling for men. Do you see that?
Oh, 100%. And you know what I find, which is a little confusing to me, I guess maybe I'm old school, but I was always raised as like, women have rights and women are equals, right? Of course, like empowering women to go out and have a career, do whatever you want. You want to be a stay-at-home mom, I don't care. That is because you're making a choice. And now I'm seeing a lot of like, be a trad wife, which is traditional wife. Be a trad wife. You should find the provider mentality. He's the man that should be doing everything and he takes care. And I'm like, wait, we go back to 1950? I'm a little confused because I thought we want to have a partnership and not have a father. I don't want a daddy. I want a man. I want or a woman or whatever. I want a they. I don't care whatever resonates. But I feel like there's a lot of conflicting information. And for me, what I say is like, does that align with me? Because I go against the grain. I always go against the grain. I always have since I was a kid. And so for me, that's more fun. But I guess I am seeing men don't know how to act. Women don't know how to receive. A lot of people are struggling. Everyone is, what I see a lot of is, I don't want to get hurt. And it's like, I don't know anybody that does.
Right.
I don't get into my car hoping I get into an accident. It's like, I'm not looking to go out there and get hurt, but I do know with risk comes reward, but also risk. And there is a chance, but if I don't trust myself that no matter what, I'll be okay, what's the point? And so I'm finding that the landscape now is getting very muddied. We have the internet that's showing everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an echo chamber. And I think we're getting further away from connection and more into attachment of like, please don't leave me. I'm so terrified I'm going to be abandoned. But aren't you doing that to yourself? When we try so hard to get you to stay, what am I doing about me?
Yeah.
So I see that often. And then we wonder why we're in relationships. Our needs aren't met. I don't feel like I can express myself. It's like, how did that start? That's why I focus on dating. Sure, I could talk about relationships, but unless you start a foundation that's solid, then what's going to happen when you're in a year in and then you start setting boundaries? That person's invested in the unhealed version of you. So it's going to take time. Either you figure this out together or you don't. But I think we have to start early on by having something really secure, and which is why I say have the hard conversations. Religion and politics, ask it. You don't have to have a soliloquy about it. You don't need to go on a dissertation about how you think that this is not fair. But if it matters to me, I need to make sure that we're aligning that. Otherwise, I'm not going to see you again. It's non-negotiable.
This is good. So, man, I'm really glad I'm not dating right now, honestly. Like, it's a lot of work. This is a lot of work. So what, do you work mostly with women? Are you like 50-50? Like 50-50? Okay.
50-50 client-wise, but 80-20 on my audience.
Okay.
This is interesting because I get a lot of people that'll message like, I don't want anyone to know I'm following a dating coach. And I'm like, oh man, you're so focused on what other people are going to perceive about you instead of actually helping yourself.
Well, that's the work they have to do first, I guess. I hear this theme of authenticity. And, you having authenticity guide your boundaries, guide your non-negotiables, guide your expectations and standards, and the pace with which you discuss those as you're dating. And then there's this kind of old method of um, attachment regardless of authenticity. And I feel like, what I've seen with my daughter and, as I started watching your content, I was like, damn, I think I've got some anxious attachment that I need to heal here. It was so helpful to like hear your straight talk about it. I kind of love to be told what to do. Sometimes it's almost like the recovery process of act as if first and then sort of let your authenticity catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Tell me about like what's going on with attachment right now? Like, why are we in such a hot mess?
First off, the internet. What makes me really sad is there's really not a true understanding of what actual attachment styles are. And I mean, especially for you clinical, I'm sure you see some of the stuff and you're like, I want to rip my hair out. If I see one more time, like, all men are avoidant, it's like, no, they're not. Okay, avoidants are not bad people. I'm sorry you're dating assholes, right? Like, I'm sorry your lived experience is that you're dating people where they're not being respectful and they're not being reciprocal and they're not being kind. Okay, please tell me how familiar that feels to you because you're allowing it. And if we see patterns, follow the pattern. But what I see with attachment is a wildly misconfused, and like everybody's trying to use attachment as almost like zodiac signs of like, well, what's your attachment style? Oh, okay, well then I don't want it. I don't know how many people are going to go out, and if I asked you what's your attachment style on my first date, which is one of my least favorite questions to ask, if someone says avoidant, you're probably going to run for the hills. No, don't want to deal with that. Someone says anxious, you're like, ugh, I don't want to deal with that. How many people are going to be like, I'm secure? You're like, yeah, okay, what does that mean? And I think attachment styles are such a beautiful way to learn about yourself. Such a great way. Like when I first found out I had anxious attachment style, it was a final moment of, oh my God, I'm not fucked up. That's what it is. Oh, okay, cool. Now what do I do?
And it's modifiable.
Oh, it was so lovely to know that I'm not, beholden to this thing. It's not like it's a diagnosis, but we're using it as that. Or I hear people go, my avoidant. And I'm like, they're not a Tamagotchi. This is not a piece of your property. This is a human being with a lived experience. And both people are having their shit. Anxious is no better than avoidant and vice versa. And the thing that people don't like to hear is that anxious people are also avoidant. We also avoid doing the deeper work. So if I can focus on you, And so I think attachment styles have now become almost weaponized in dating of like, I'm not going to date an avoidant. And I need to know, how do I tell that he's avoidant early on? And it's like what I'm trying to explain to people is your attachment styles typically show up when you're triggered. I'm not walking around like a maniac screaming at people all day because I have anxious attachment. But when I get triggered and my body feels there's a threat, I'm going to react in the ways that I did growing up. I had an inconsistent father who was always in and out, and I had a people-pleasing mother who would disassociate. I learned anxiety was the only way I could survive in my household. That's maladaptive as an adult. It's the same with my partner. His father has his stuff that he used to do with it and all of that in their childhood. And now as an adult, he's learned that opening up means you're weak. No. You need to be a man. You need to shut your mouth and you need to put those emotions away. Both of us are unlearning terrible stuff. But if I had seen that in the beginning of, oh, well, he's avoiding one away, I would never have been able to be in a relationship where both of us can heal and grow together because you hurt in relationships, but you heal in relationships. And I find that attachment styles, beautiful, love them. Thank you so much for learning about yourself. The minute I hear my avoidant, my anxious, I'm done. You've turned me off because we're trying so hard. If we intellectualize why they do the behavior, we can bypass how shitty it feels in our body. But that's the problem. We're trying to understand them and we're disconnected from ourselves. I could talk about this all day.
Well, this is super juicy. So there's a plasticity to your attachment style but there's also there's a growth process so that some people can unlearn, as you described. Some people can become securely attached. But then there's probably also signals that someone is less likely to be able to change their attachment style. Can you help me kind of understand what some of those signals might be?
I'm looking for growth-minded. That's my thing, because if I have black and white, it's good or bad, it's this or that, well, then I'm probably not going to be able to understand the gray areas and the nuance. And I'm big on nuance because people will ask all day of like, what does this mean? And it's like, I take that really seriously to answer because that's your life that's on the line here. And if I just give you a flippant response and that's not actually thinking about your circumstance, then that's not actually being fair. But I think what we really want to start to understand is like, I continuously go back to, does this work for me? Coming back home to myself. For me, my partner works for me. For you, you might say he's a fucking nightmare. Everybody's going to be different. But I really think at the end of the day, I totally forgot. What was your question? I was going and I was like, I don't think I'm answering it.
You're getting into it. So I was asking about like plasticity. Like, how do you get a sense for whether someone is able to, sort of break the cycle that they grew up in?
Sorry, I have ADHD and sometimes
I do too, girl.
Yeah, I'm like,
you're in good company.
Some people will say stuff and I'm like, oh, deal with it. So I think when it comes to the plasticity, for me, like one question I always asked on a first date or that like my partner really instilled in me is like, what is something that you changed your mind about recently and what prompted the change? And I want to get curious about how eager are you to learn and to grow and to evolve? Because I see it. I think every person on the planet has the ability to grow and to evolve, but I think it's a matter of what's their echo chamber. What's the story that they've created about it? I did a video today and she said, no, there is no one better out there for me and I'm never going to find him. And I said, look at the words that you're using. I said, that's called scarcity mindset. And I understand that there's a little girl in there that's like, nope, one set of parents, can't look at anything else. But if the further away we stay from that, the further away we are from actually changing it. And so I think, neuroplasticity shows us at 28, sure, I'm done cooking. My brain is done actually developing. But in those years after 28, I can rewire. I can try. It's going to take me time. If I'm on the same dirt road every single day, it's going to take a minute for new tracks to be discovered and to be created. But I think what I'm really looking for is how growth-minded are you and how open to another person's lived experience are people? Because a lot of people think, well, this is my lived experience. I've only had this with avoidance. But they don't really understand that there are plenty of other people that have other circumstances and experiences that go on.
Mm. So one of the things I'm struck by, Sabrina, is I've been working with mostly women, but also men for the past 30 years. The portal is hormone imbalance. And I feel like so much of hormone imbalance is relationships. And we don't realize it. And I wonder if you have a sense of that, since it sounds like your embodiment is quite high. I remember in my teenage years and 20s just being so wrecked by these difficult relationships and being attracted to avoidant or unavailable men. And I never sort of understood how much that was jacking up my cortisol and leading to the stress in my body. And, and it wasn't just a cortisol problem. It was causing blood sugar issues. It was leading to autoimmunity. Like it was a bigger problem than just cortisol.
Yeah.
So I feel like our worlds are kind of meeting here.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
So tell me about how do you feel cortisol? How is that mapped to the work that you're doing with relationships? What do you see?
Oh, I see it all the time, especially in the twofold of one, that when cortisol spikes, all of our other neurotransmitters are being depleted. So when we're constantly feeding, I want the dopamine. Why aren't they texting me? What's going on? Okay, well, you're now actually just, you're making it worse for yourself because the more we focus on that, then all of those other things are being depleted. My cortisol is spiking. And then when I get it, I can breathe. It's my oxygen until the next second because it's never been about the text. It's always been about what's physiologically happening. For me, I was the queen of every doctor being like, you need birth control, and you need this, and you need this pill, and you need this pill. Until I found a more holistic doctor that was like, hey man, you're riddled with mold. This is impact. You have I have a estrogen blocking microparticle something. My body thinks I have it, but I'm not making it. And I was wondering, why was I going off on my partner randomly? Why was I screaming? Because the gut to brain axis is so real. And once I started to understand that my anxiety was also physiological, and when I could really understand, like even now, it's been 10 months I've been doing this mold detox, and I have never felt better. But even now, my doctor keeps saying, she's like, we can't touch your hormones. We have got to deal with this first, and then I can try to balance you. And so now she's trying to understand when I wake up and say, I'm really depressed. I woke up really sad. She's like, okay, what did you eat before dinner? Or what did you eat before bed? Did you adjust your blood sugar? Did you wake up in the middle of the night? What's happening with this? Okay, your hormones are here. Because we think it's just external. oh my God, so much happens internal. So much happens in our bodies. And when I eat poorly or when I don't get my sleep, when I don't take care of myself, I know that we think, oh, that's so cute. But like, no, getting wasted on a first date, coming home at 3 a.m., then having to wake up at 6, your day is done. And that's not me taking care of myself. And then I'm impacting my hormones, I'm impacting my brain, I'm impacting all my cortisol and my different neurotransmitters. And at that point, I'm done. And so I think what I see often is, especially with limerence, you know limerence, right?
Mm-mm.
Oh. Limerence is a term coined in, like, I think the 70s. Essentially, it just means an obsession with somebody that you don't really, like, have a relationship with.
Okay.
So an example of, like, many moons ago when I lived in Venice, I went on one date. I dated. That's an aggressive term. I went on a date with a guy, and I was obsessed with him. I couldn't stop thinking about him because of the story that I built of, like, oh, he's successful. What does that mean about me? And if he really likes me, what is that? That validates me. Then all these people are wrong. And then I'm cool. And we could do all these things. That's limerence. Just getting into, and that's a chemical reaction. That's an addiction. We get addicted to, that's why I hate texting. We get addicted to, but they didn't text me this morning. And where are they? And why aren't they calling me?
It's like this whole story you're projecting onto this person, this innocent person.
Yeah. And your body is reacting to it. Because our body, is half the time, our brain can't tell the difference between real and fake pain. Like
your body believes it.
Body believes it. How many times do you think your heart is breaking and you're like, I feel it. I remember when my dog died, I was like, so this is what that feels like. This is what it feels like to feel it rip down the middle. And it's like, but it healed. It didn't actually rip, but emotionally it felt like it. And so it's important to be able to understand our physiological and our emotional body. It's like a nervous system. We have our skeletal, muscular nervous system, and then we have the vagus nerve. We have different parts of us. And I think if we focus just on one, we really don't do ourselves a service for the rest.
You mentioned mold detox, and I'm really glad you brought that up because, you know, the percentage of people who are susceptible to mold toxicity, I'm one of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's much higher than people realize. And about half of houses and buildings are water damaged, so we're exposed to mold all the time. And it's so interesting to me that a lot of folks take their physiology, these changes that are occurring physiologically, like mold, biotoxin illness, and they assume that they have some sort of moral failing or that the blow-ups they're having with their partner are due to some trigger or something they're doing, and they don't realize kind of the role of physiology in this whole story. So I appreciate how you're bringing this in, and I also, I mean, the other piece that I've noticed is that people who have this level of sensitivity that you're describing, they often become the mystics. They become the cultural leaders.
It's a different calling. And it's interesting, to your point about the physiological with the mold, it became clear to me. I mean, now it's painfully clear how I'm like, oh, wow, so this is what it feels like to not have my heart racing all the time. Like, that feels really rad. I had I think it was like I had an overgrowth of a good bacteria. And the doctor warned me, and she was like, all right, I'm going to put you on Candibactin. This is going to be intense. Intense is the most underrated word I could say. I had and like I have friends that are on it that are just like, yo, you have. When I say, even Ryan, my partner, he looked, he was like, yo, dude, this is not normal. And I remember I didn't even think anything of it. I didn't put 2 and 2. I started taking them, and it was slow, right? It's like you take 1 and you're like, okay, I'm fine. And she's like, you good? Fine. Take 2, fine, okay. Then she goes, okay, let's go. You're good. And then a week later, I had my call with her, and I just out of nowhere, I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, maybe it's just been my period. I was like, I don't know. I've been crying. I've been depressed. And she stopped. She's like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me? It's the Candibactin. And I said, what are you talking about? And she's like, your body's getting rid of the good bacteria. It's holding on with dear life. I was manic. I was screaming. I was crying. I mean, Ryan would say no, and I'd start breaking down. He was like, babe, is everything okay?
Yeah.
And
this is gut rehab.
Completely.
Yeah.
And she tried. I stayed for like 3 weeks. I tried. And she was like, okay, I think I need to pull you off. And because it got to the point where I'm like, I'm not getting out of bed. I don't want to record. I don't want to be. And I was like, okay, this is impacting my life. And then now that I've been off of it, I'm like, okay, I can breathe. It's okay. And that really showed me the actual physiological example of the gut to brain axis.
Totally.
Of how trying to kill off that good bacteria made me sound like I was a fucking Looney Tune. Just really goes to show that, like, it might not be, until the end of the day, it might not be your childhood trauma. It might not always be, oh, this reminds me of my dad. It's like maybe there are deeper levels, but you need someone that's actually going to hear you. And I just had a bunch of doctors who were telling me to get on antidepressants. That wasn't the problem.
Totally.
So I'm big on the physiological. And I'm curious, too, like, as you've done your work, what have you noticed when it comes to the correlation between the hormones and how we kind of show up with our partners? Like, I'm sure you've seen it.
Well, I think it's huge. I feel like, I can speak to what I've seen in my clients, and I can speak to what I've experienced personally. there are ways, one of the symptoms that comes up a lot because not many of my patients are dating. This is
Sure.
mostly a younger crowd, but that said, the highest divorce rate is in women who are 45.
Mhm.
So it's, there's kind of another hump in terms of dating. And I'm curious about how the approach may be the same or different. But one of the things I've seen is that a lot of women bend over backwards to accommodate a marriage that is not healthy.
Mm-mm.
And they have chronic cortisol problems, like we talked about, or they have some other vulnerability, whether it's biotoxin illness or chronic Lyme or some other problem along those lines. I've had a lot of patients who come to me for decreased libido.
Mm.
And often with those patients, even though you tell them that relationship is such a big part of sexual attractiveness and sexual satisfaction, you never totally put it together until you optimize their hormones. Like their testosterone is just right on target, estrogen, progesterone, everything's firing well. And they still have low libido. Like it's actually the relationship, it's not the biology.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's more obvious like that, but not always.
Yeah.
And I got out of a marriage that was 20 years where I had chronic stress and cortisol problems. I'm not blaming him. It just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
And we tried, a decade of couples therapy to try to address it and never could quite get out from under it. So it's something I see a lot, especially with women. And I feel like some of these concepts that you teach are really fundamental to healing some of these relational issues.
I can't tell you how many times I see people and I'm like, I'm going to be that person that says, I don't think every relationship should be saved. I don't think we should be fighting so hard to save every relationship, especially when you see it and you're like, this is very painfully obvious. You're two different people. You're two different. There is only so much people are going to change and evolve and grow. And that's why I hear it all the time. And I'm actually curious your thoughts. Because like I see my mom's 70. So it's like, okay, I've got that. I've got different ranges up until that. But I see my mom's generation, for instance, and it was, my mama always says, she's like, the word narcissist, she's like, we didn't even know what that meant. She's like, what was the word narcissist? She's like, did you think I knew what your father was? She's like, what I saw? Good Housekeeping magazines of why I'm not keeping your father happy. Why is he not satisfied?
Yeah.
She's like, so of course, what did I do? Go harder. And that's her wound and plays right into perfectly her trauma. But I see now, it's like, I hear it all the time of like, dating's the worst now. Why can't we go back? Men used to go to war and they can't even do this. And it's like, well, first of all, we also got married at like fucking 19 back in the day. You were dying by the time you're 50 for a lot of people. I'm like, it was a different world.
Mm-hmm.
You had no technology. Or, oh, you're here, I'm here, great, let's get married. And I think with all of this inundation of all the negative of the app, but there's also a lot of positives because now we get to make choices for ourselves. Now we're not beholden to, my grandmother in 1955 when she was in Egypt. You couldn't, single with two, or not, when I was talking 1945, her husband had passed away. 1950, you couldn't. She had to get married. You were not allowed to be. I mean, it was the ultimate disrespect to have a woman not have a husband in that time. Now, we'd celebrate her. We'd be like, good for you, girl. You getting back out there. You single woman. We have different choices now. Mm-hmm. And so I think, although, yes, dating has become like really muddied and we have all those things, but dating apps I met my partner in a dating app. All of these TikTok and Instagram connected us. Mm-hmm. It gets us to we have a whole new world, but I think we have to be really aware and cognizant of how we're using that because I think the internet is that double-edged sword. It's like, it's so beautiful, but it's also so messy. And so I think, yeah, dating has changed, and as we get older, things are changing, but I actually think now is a better time to date because we actually get to choose what we want. We don't just have to get into a 20-year marriage where you realize at the end of it, you just married them because you didn't know and you were 22 and you didn't know any better. And I'm not saying that's everyone's experience, but I think it is a really beautiful time to make a choice for yourself.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, we've got this level of complexity with how connected we are with AI, with big data, and yet there are these simple truths that you teach that really are at the core of relationship.
We were on a hike the other day. I felt so bad. We saw two kids, maybe 20, not even, anywhere between like 15 to 20. And you could see that they're friends because they like touched each other and stuff. Both of them had their headphones on. And they're on a hike. And I just looked at Ryan and I was like, wait a minute. I'm not understanding. I was like, but they're together. Why aren't they talking? That's that disconnect that we see because we're so in our own heads and we're in our own echo chamber, and they can't even just take an ear off and look at your friend and be like, hey man, how you doing? Or I saw a Bumble ad. This one drove me nuts. It was a girl at a party, and she looks over and sees the DJ is cute. And instead of just, I don't know, going up and talking to him, she goes on her phone, finds him on Bumble, swipes, puts it away, and keeps talking.
Ew.
What a disconnection. What a disservice to ourselves. Instead of, I don't know, doing something uncomfortable like maybe getting rejected in person, but letting that build your confidence because you know that you're okay no matter what, even when it happens. And so I again, love technology, love AI, love what it can do, but also it terrifies me at the same time because I see what it does to humans because we are not evolved enough for all this technology. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I'm a primate still. I'm still back in like 12 BC trying to figure out like how to chart fire, let alone am I figuring out how to transfer files larger than my house. I don't understand it.
So I want to go back to this question about what are we regulating our nervous systems for? Are we regulating for the right reasons? Are we regulating to like fit ourselves into a box with a particular person, or are we regulating for like this bigger truth and authentic self that we're mapping toward? And there was even, I had a little question for you that I saved. Let me see if I can find it.
I mean, I hope we're regulating for the right reasons, Lord knows, but.
And how do we know? So I just want to, this is sort of related. This is Somatically Sam on Threads. Thank you, Somatically Sam. We live in a society where an entire generation of women are being taught to regulate their nervous systems, to tolerate environments they are meant to outgrow. What do you think about that?
I think.
What do you notice?
What I notice about that is while I understand the empowering part of it, it actually still takes away the power because I'm not regulating to fit in an environment that I know. I'm regulating for myself. I'm regulating so I can make a choice if that environment works for me anymore. I'm regulating so I get to make choices and decisions as an adult. And I'm regulating because that does me a service, not necessarily everybody else. And for me to be able to handle things so I can put my head on the pillow at night, I'm regulating my nervous system because I want to show up and keep my side of the street clean, but I can't control the rest. And so I think, well, I understand the point. I would encourage it to maybe flip the narrative of if I'm doing this for me, I find it beneficial no matter what. Because if I'm at a grocery store and I'm just screaming, okay, maybe that's not the environment for me. Or if I have a partner that is a POS, you're right, maybe that's not the environment for me anymore. But me regulating my nervous system is so that I can identify that and so that I can choose that and so that I can make the decision for my little that I was never allowed to make. Because when I'm regulated, I get to talk to her like the adult that I didn't have. When I'm dysregulated, I'm an asshole to her. I'm yelling at her. I'm screaming at her. I'm doing all of these things because I'm her in that moment. I'm fused with her in that moment, and I feel like I'm her. But when I regulate, I'm able to remove myself from all of the parts and all of the pieces and all of the stuff and come back home to my body and say, does this work for me anymore?
Sabrina, you are a mystic. I'm so curious about, like, what's the map for you? Like, what's next? Where are you going to be in 5 years?
Hopefully.
What do you sense?
My biggest goal is I want to be able to help people on a scale. I want to be able to bring this to the world. And I don't need to be celebrity. I don't want to be famous to where I can't walk down the street. Like, that's never been the goal. But my biggest passion is I want to be on TV. I want to be a host. I want to be on a show. Like, I see these Love Island and Love is Blind, and I'm like, where is the adult in the room? Can I just sit down for 10 minutes with them and fucking screw their head on straight so that when they get back out there, these girls, these women, and that's what annoys me too when I watch these shows. They always refer to them as girls. And it's like, no, that's why. They're women. They're powerful women. They're beautiful women. They're incredible women, and treat them like a woman, not like a girl. And I think that's where I get annoyed. So I would love to be able to help people on a bigger scale and actually show them, like, you can go from this to this and be really fucking proud of yourself, even if you don't get to that end goal. Because for me, the end goal is not a relationship. Great, congratulations. I can get you in that, no problem, even if it's good for you or not. My end goal is that you came back home to yourself. Yeah. Because if I could do that, I can't control the rest, but I can control that.
That's beautiful. I see it. We're wrapping up. Any final words?
Nothing besides to anybody. If you're going to take anything away from this entire thing, I think the biggest thing is, because we didn't really touch on the anxiety versus how do I know if it's my anxiety? How do I know if it's my gut? How do I be able to differentiate that? Start getting curious. Curiosity is what changed everything for me. When I started to get curious about it and not just take what my brain gave me and was like, no, listen, bitch, what are you talking about? Come over here. What are you saying? Where did that come from? What are you noticing? How are you feeling about that? that changed everything for me. And so if I can encourage everybody to just get a little bit more curious and for fuck's sake, try talking nicely to yourself, because you can release more dopamine if you're compassionate to yourself versus if you attack yourself, you're spiking up your cortisol even more. And then you're just doing to yourself what other people have done to you. And so that would be my leave off message is like, get curious about the story. Anxiety comes with a body reaction and a story, but your gut is a lot calmer and usually more immediate. And I want you to follow that.
Love it. Thank you so much, Sabrina Zohar.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.